Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. We're going to have a big tone shift in just a minute because there's breaking news in the president's first reaction, the devastating and murderous attack yesterday overnight in Kyiv. We'll get that in a minute. Dan, good morning. Sean, switching tone, upbeat. Where are you and why? And
We are
who's with you?
live this morning. We are live this morning in Fort Myers, Florida, at the Helm Pool in the landings of. Oh, look at this! So many people excited to start the day with the morning meeting. We went old school, Mark. Not just raise your electronic hand. We're going to raise our physical hands this morning, bring people into the discussion like we've never done before. But that's why this is a unique platform.
Yep. So welcome everybody there. Poolside with Sean. Thank you for getting up and joining us. Thanks everybody for joining here on Two-Way, on X, on YouTube. If you're here on the Two-Way platform, you can also get questions in, although you're going to be hard pressed to compete with those youngsters there with Sean, who are going to have some
Yeah. By the
questions
way,
as
I
well.
just a bit of a programming note. We're gonna have to end exactly at 10 because water aerobics is gonna start on time this morning,
Yeah.
and and so I just want to make sure everyone we
All
can't
right.
run over.
Yeah. We will not warn our affiliates. We will not run over today. Thank you for joining again. Welcome to the morning meeting. Moments ago, President Trump, 201, please, responded at a critical time. Vladimir Putin did something that's either explicable or inexplicable, launching a very deadly attack on Kyiv. Zelensky is returning to the country because of the attacks. He was in South Africa. President Trump moments ago. I'm not happy with the Russian strikes on Kyiv. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get the peace deal done. Incredible developments. This attack amidst the conversations. NATO officials in Washington today meeting with all the top Trump national security officials to talk about this issue. Newt Gingrich tweeting this morning, 105, please. An ally of the president, but with a much different point of view about the essential need to stop Putin and expressing greater distrust of Putin than President Trump normally does. It's clear from Putin's attack on Kyiv that he still does not believe there are any negative consequences for continuing the war. The West has not yet convinced the Russian dictator that the alternative to a ceasefire is a lot greater threat to his regime. Until he fears that there is a serious consequence, he will continue lying and fighting with stunning cynicism. Then there's this cartoon that caught our eye, 104, concern that the American peace deal lets Putin win. And you see the caption of the quote, let this be a warning to China. If they invade Taiwan, they'll only be allowed to keep some of it. I talked to many national security experts in and outside the administration. Nobody knows how this is going to go. The president and his administration threatening to basically end involvement in the conflict if there's not a deal. A lot of mistrust of Zelensky, who will be in Rome with the president in 2 days. A lot of distrust among some Republicans of Putin and a fear that President Trump, despite his Truth Social post this morning, is not doing enough to make a deal that will be fair to both sides. So, gentlemen, Sean first, um, how do you think this is going to go now? Do you think that this is all bluffing and the parties will come together, or do you think there's a real chance the administration is going to walk away from military and intelligence assistance?
I think that might have been the plan yesterday. I think when Putin went over the top through his continued bombing, he probably pushed Trump's buttons in the wrong way. And that's where I think you're going to see when people like Newt Gingrich aren't afraid to come out and publicly say that this is in a bad place. That's the equivalent of what we've seen on the economic front. When people start coming out, applying that external pressure, I think it's going to have an effect on Trump's thinking right now. He doesn't look, Trump believes, and I think he's right, that this would have never happened on his watch. He wants to see it ended. And I think he's put together a very, very robust plan to end the peace. If Putin doesn't take this, Trump's going to take this as a personal affront. And I think it's not just walking away, but I think it's not like he's just going to walk away. I think Trump's got to feel like there's going to be economic and potential military sanctions against Russia in a way that's going to make him feel this.
If what? If the attacks continue or if Putin doesn't agree to a sweetheart deal?
Both.
Dan,
I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would entirely call it a sweetheart deal,
well,
but I think it's the most
letting
favorable terms that
let
he's ever going to get.
letting him keep all the territory is, in the view of almost everybody I've talked to, not a great deal for the world.
I mean,
Dan,
the idea that this would never happen on his watch, Sean, it's happening on his watch.
no, Dan,
No.
no,
No,
Dan,
it did not happen on
Dan,
his
it's
watch.
just a factual matter.
No.
They didn't
You guys
take.
didn't let me finish, both of
Yeah.
you. It is happening now. Trump just tweeted, stop Vladimir. I would love if Kamala Harris had said, Vladimir, stop. The only thing he was missing was please. He hasn't stopped since Trump started this. He hasn't. He continues to bomb. Overnight, they put out that they are not okay with EU peacekeepers, right? So Trump's tweets at Zelensky are savaging him, right? Zelensky keeps giving and giving and giving. And we've said, oh, Crimea, he's never going to get it back. They're never going to get back the territory. Okay. And we've all said that peacekeepers, to make sure Putin doesn't do this anymore, have to be part of the deal, right? We've all said this. Putin just said no. Flat out, no.
So Dan, just I want to focus on one question. Where do you think this is going?
We are at the fork in the road. I've never believed Trump cares one iota about Ukraine. I think he'll sell it out in 30 seconds. He is either going to stand up to Putin and guarantee Ukraine security, basically in the next couple of weeks, or he's walking away.
But there's no deal with Putin if you say they're going to be in NATO. There's no appetite.
Mark,
there's no appetite. But there's no appetite to put American troops on the ground. So you're saying guarantee Ukraine security with European troops
and money and logistical support from America. It's the only way it's going to happen. We all know it.
But then if Zelensky won't do a deal that involves the Donbass or other territory,
look, Crimea, that's the final piece with Zelensky. He has pounded Zelensky and pounded Zelensky. He does not pound Putin. Putin keeps playing him. And we all talk about it as if it doesn't exist.
Sean, the problem to me, based on conversations I've had, is these are two untrustworthy guys. Right. Zelensky's been built up as Churchill, but in terms of these negotiations, in terms of his ability to deliver, in some ways he's every bit as untrustworthy for these purposes as Putin. I'm not saying he's as evil as Putin, but he's as untrustworthy a negotiating partner from the president's point of view as Putin is.
Well, I think that you ask where this is going. To me, this is very similar to the economic situation. Who's going to lead this effort in terms of the solution? Is it going to be Steve Witkoff or is it going to be Marco Rubio? Because I think they both have very different styles and view Russia in different paradigms. So to me, this is a question of who wins this fight. I think if Rubio wins this fight, you're going to see a much stronger stance against Putin. No offense to Steve Witkoff, but I think Witkoff really wants the deal. Yeah, and I think Rubio his views on Putin are long held.
But if you're someone like Rubio or Gingrich and you don't want to give Putin a victory in this deal, how do you force that back to sanctions? I mean,
no. You got to do something. I mean, that's the point. I get what we're saying. I mean, when you talk about Crimea and the Donbass and all that, the answer is then what else? Because right now, for 4 years, no one else has put together anything close to a realistic plan for peace. Not one person, right? So the Europeans haven't done this. No one in the Biden administration did it. So it's great to criticize Trump, but then come forward with a plan and say, here's what it looks like.
But what's Trump's plan? Well, hold on. Before you answer what's Trump's plan, what is Putin's goal?
Oh, continue. Yeah. I mean, he would love to continue aggression.
Okay. So Mark, the plan and the leverage Trump has is to draw the red line with arms. It doesn't have to be U.S. soldiers, but all the stuff that you guys said.
That's what they're talking to NATO about today.
No, he does not. He is saying you guys need to do it, but he will not commit to our providing that. He won't. We keep saying,
well, but it's not the U.S. isn't going to provide it. Europe's going to provide it. It's not going to be U.S.
We're not going to provide money and arms.
No, I think it's one thing to provide munitions or money.
Yeah.
I think
another thing
intelligence on the ground. This is a European fight.
Oh, yeah. I agree. They're going to have to put the bodies, but we're going to have to provide the munitions and support.
All right. I just want to show you 103. This is Zelensky talking to Ben Shapiro in an interview. The trailer's out. I'm not sure the whole interview's out, but here's Zelensky with Ben Shapiro.
All working? Yes?
Yes, all good.
Action.
I want to start by asking you about the meeting that you had in the Oval Office. How do you feel that you could have handled things better with the president and vice president?
The meeting in the Oval Office, it did not help Ukraine.
You spent nearly $200 billion to the defense of Ukraine. There are lots of questions about where the money is going.
There's nothing to hide. We're absolutely open.
Would an audit be possible by the United States of where those dollars are going?
We are kind of the living shield against Russia's invasion to the civilized world.
I want to get to Russia's intentions and the possibilities of a ceasefire. Americans have questions about things that are happening here.
So I don't want to minimize Zelensky's heroism early in this conflict, but he is not equipped, I don't believe, to make this deal, and he's not equipped to continue to lead the country. And I'm not even talking about the corruption. I'm not. I'm just talking about fatigue and the fact that he's got a horrible relationship with the president of the United States. So the reason I'm so consumed by what happens next is, as I said, I can't find anybody who says what happens next. But these are not two guys who are looking to make a deal, or so it appears. Now, it is the case that Witkoff's going to Russia tomorrow, and maybe he and Putin will have some new kind of conversation. But as Sean, as you said, he seems less anti-Putin than the other people who are involved at the table here for the United States. So
I think he's just more committed to getting a deal. I don't, you know what I mean? I think
well,
that's,
yeah, well,
but
but he's not in the Gingrich or Rubio camp of saying. I mean, look, there are a
right.
lot of people who say you shouldn't be sitting with Putin. You know,
Correct.
He's the only one willing to sit with him. All right, there's lots to talk about here, and my spidey sense tells me there's going to be a development in the next 45 minutes while we're on the air. So let's move on to tariffs. Um, the view in the administration and their allies is talk about tariffs differently. Don't talk about them as long term. Don't talk about them as punitive. Talk about them as a package of strategies and tactics to bring back the American economy, to make things more fair. Don't make it seem like they're going to go on forever. That's the change in the rhetoric. Bessent-led conversation. You see it in the president's tone. And people say it's driven by markets, and people say it's driven by criticism from Europe or whatever, or from business leaders. Here's one thing that's driving it: polling. Okay. Here's the Fox poll from yesterday, came out last night, 108. Okay. And you can bet the president and his team have seen not just the private polling, but these public polls. 108, please. This is Fox job performance for the president on a range of issues. And if you go all the way down the second to the bottom, tariffs, disapproval, 58, only a third of the country amongst the people Fox polled, registered voters, a third approve of the president's job on tariffs. That is abysmal, right? That's abysmal. Same kind of numbers in Pew, 109, which is here, approve, disapprove of Trump's job performance on tariffs. Again, roughly the same numbers, 40% approve of the job he's doing. Still abysmal for something that's dominating the news. So, Dan, is it enough to turn these numbers around? And by the way, when people say, well, the president's numbers are down on even on immigration, I think the tariff thing has been so big in the news and so top of mind for folks, along with inflation, that it's driving his numbers down on everything. That they're not saying they disapprove of tariff of his immigration policy. It's just driving him negative amongst independents in particular down. So they're saying disapprove, disapprove, disapprove to these pollsters. Is it enough for the president to talk about tariffs differently and pursue the same policies, or does he need to change the policies to get these numbers back up?
I'll just quickly say on immigration, I saw the first poll. It was YouGov asked specifically, should Garcia be returned or should he remain in El Salvador? 51% said he should be returned. 29 said he should remain there. I know you think it's bringing down everything tariffs, but I'll say again, I do not see any data that supports the president's policy. Doesn't mean Democrats are benefiting. I think we're hanging ourselves a little bit.
But let me just say on Garcia, Washington Post story. Very few people out there, an AP, very few have reported this, so it's undercovered in the news cycle. The judge last night basically took sealed motions from both sides, and it appears from the few things are public that he may be coming back to the United States. That negotiations are going on with El Salvador to bring him back. Not that he's going to be free, and it's going to put Democrats in a crazy position because some of them are going to give him a hero's welcome when he comes back, and that's not going to be good. Anyway, Dan, keep going on tariffs.
Yeah, either that or they see the same polling. Look, I think the messaging that they're now shifting towards, that this is necessary and the problem is just reality. The reality of what they want to do is likely to be slowing corporate profits, layoffs, and an increase in inflation. There's just no getting around that. And so I think they can message all they want. They can try to reassure, but just the real world and the markets, and I don't just mean the stock market, I mean just day-to-day business, is dictating this isn't working and it won't work.
Sean.
So I will say this, and I'll tie both of the immigration and the tariff issue together for a second. First of all, I will say, while I think this is absolutely horrible policy, if Abrego Garcia comes back on U.S. soil, Democrats are going to own that. That is something that I will tell you that issue will flip on a dime. The idea that you are going to be advocating for a gangbanger, a wife abusing illegal alien to come back into this country, God bless you guys if you think that that's going to help politically. Secondly, where I think that there's a problem both on the tariff issue and on the immigration issue is a lack of consistent messaging. Okay. Chris Wilson, who will be on my show tomorrow night, has a brand new deck out. And what it shows is that when the issues are framed in specific ways, they are popular. I think the problem the administration's having, specifically on tariffs, is what we've talked about before. Is it to bring, to create more of an onshoring of manufacturing back to the U.S.? Is it an issue of fairness? Is it an issue of deficit reduction? People will buy into the idea of an onshoring, bringing manufacturing back in fairness. I think they've got to be more consistent on the messaging. But when you look at it in those frameworks, it actually is a winner.
I think the only challenge is it's a winner in the abstract. It's not a winner in reality. If you said to people, you're going to have prices go up 10% by September, or we're going to try to reshore, don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, let me say one thing about polling, then I got to double back because I never did do the daybook because we jumped right into Ukraine, and then we're going to talk about a new issue. Folks, I'm not a big believer in all polls, and I understand why there's skepticism about polls, and polls are sometimes wrong. But I don't read the chat, but I glance at it. To call polls you don't like because they run against your side, fake polls, is really, really silly, okay? Every poll is showing the same thing, and the polls are not biased. These polls aren't biased. And by the way, the private polling is showing the same thing. So if you want to say it's fake news or fake polls, when Fox and Pew and private Republican polling shows the president's job approval on tariffs is down, you're putting your head in the sand and you're ignoring data and facts and truth. Just because you don't like a poll to reflexively say the poll is wrong, it's just silly. Shouldn't do it. It's silly.
All right. You can go hang out with Kamala Harris.
Exactly. The president today is meeting with the prime minister of Norway, greets him at noon, open press, bilateral lunch, closed press, then a bilateral meeting in the Oval, 105 open press, and presumably by then you'll hear more from the president on Ukraine and Russia. Signs executive orders, closed press at 4:30. Of course, that could become open. Then he goes to his club in Virginia, the Trump National Golf Club, for a MAGA dinner. Vice President continues overseas. As I said, the head of NATO is meeting here in Washington with Rubio, Hegseth, and Waltz. I think those meetings have already started this morning. As I also said, Witkoff heads to Moscow. I don't know if he's traveling today, but he's supposed to meet with Putin tomorrow. Congress is still out. At this hour, the Democratic Party is holding a press conference with the current chairman and past chairman Howard Dean to have some new proposal about revitalizing the Democrats. And of course, the most important event of the day occurs at 8 p.m. Eastern time when in Green Bay, the NFL hosts.
By the way, on that DNC meeting, it'll be interesting what they come out with. There's a lot of speculation because Dean's there, but also the current chairman is basically reprimanding David Hogg, the vice chair, for that activity we talked earlier about, where Hogg is basically standing up an outside entity to attack incumbent Democrats. I think this is going to be interesting. It'll force his hand that either he has to give up one or the other. Yeah. Which one does he choose?
Yeah, the Politico is reporting that there's going to be a resolution saying you can't be a DNC official if you don't support incumbents, which I agree with Ro Khanna and David Hogg. I agree. To have a prohibition against supporting people in primaries, I think is a little antithetical to the First Amendment. But I get why the DNC, you guys feel more strongly about it than I do. You shouldn't be vice chair and not support your incumbents. But I think in general,
the RNC's had a long rule about that. I mean, you have to support the nominee.
I just think in general, well, the nominee, but what about a primary, in an open primary? I just think in general, saying there's incumbent protection across the board, I just think is not a great thing. But if you want to be vice chair, you probably should support your incumbents, I would say. Even I would say that, and I'm anti-incumbent. All right, the education agenda. Not much coverage, but President Trump signed a number of executive orders yesterday related to education. I think the fight with Harvard and the other Ivy League and elite schools and the stated goal of abolishing the Department of Education has overshadowed some other really interesting and provocative things the president's trying to do now on education. So, Sean, what's your view of the orders he signed yesterday and why they're important?
Well, the big one yesterday really had to do with accreditation, whether or not how these schools get accredited, because accreditation leads to funding. So it's all part of it. And I think what I think is fascinating about the approach here, and this is where I go back to why this term is so consequential. They've been able to game out this. It's not just attacking Harvard or going after their endowments or federal funding. This is literally getting at the core of the issue, which is if you can go after the what gets them accredited, the gateway drug to federal funding, if you will, that's the key to this thing. I love how their approach is very different. It's much more methodical, much more thought through. And I think, again, this is like the Maha movement issue that we discussed yesterday, where it's not getting the attention it deserves. So I like the way that this is being handled. I think there's a lot of support for this. If there's one area that probably you get very little sympathy from, it's these big institutions with multi-billion-dollar endowments that then get a ton of federal funding. There's not a lot of sympathy for them. And I think the way the president, Linda McMahon, and others are going at them is fantastic.
Dan.
I think it depends what they do here. If the goal of this is to try to find a creative way to punish the Ivy League schools, and it's primarily the Ivy League schools, then this is absurd and their messaging is all over the place. Because you had Secretary McMahon saying that the goal of their accreditation push here is to hold schools accountable to, quote, improve graduation rates and graduates' performance in the labor market. I don't think anybody would argue that the Ivy League schools produce high graduation rates and their students don't do well entering the labor market, right? If the goal is, quote, ideological overreach, which is what Trump said, then this is just absurd. But I will say that buried in some of that is the idea of holding schools accountable for their graduation rates, for how they do, because there are so many colleges that probably shouldn't be accredited, that students rack up huge amounts of debt, going through, and they don't really get anything for it. And if that is what they focus on, which is more a bottom of the market issue, then amen. I think it's mostly working class people who get taken advantage of in those situations. But again, if this is just another way, if they're going to try to argue that Harvard doesn't produce enough graduates for the labor market, I think Americans will just laugh at this and Trump will lose more. People see it as crazy.
My guess is that's the legal way to attack this,
Totally.
but it's not going to be the messaging on it.
It is with Linda McMahon yesterday. She looked in the camera and said it. It was crazy with a straight face. We're going to hold them accountable for graduate performance in the labor market.
Well, I think part of this comes down to the fact that you have all of these people spending $95,000 a year for a degree in something that's never going to. So it's one thing to say Harvard produces smart people. There's no question about that in a lot of fields. But you're piling on a ton of debt on a lot of other graduates that will never make back that money, regardless of where the degree is from.
All right, we're gonna move on. We got a couple more topics, then we're gonna get to your questions, including some there with Sean in Florida. And again, if you're watching on two-way, you want to get in, please raise your hand. Conservative Twitter's going crazy on Ukraine and Russia right now. I'm distracted because I'm reading all these interesting things, and of course, there's a big split in the party, right? There's the Gingrich Rubio wing, and then there's the MAGA wing, and it's fascinating. All right, Democrats. There's this press conference this morning. Karl Rove is a party guy, right? And he cares a lot about parties, and he's a Republican and he's very partisan. But he looks at the Democrats, I think, with a pretty clear eye. In his column in the Wall Street Journal today, he basically says the Democratic Party is in horrible shape. That they're on issues and leadership, etc. That they're not doing a good job of getting ready for the midterms, and that they could underperform in the midterms and maybe not even take the House because of everything that's going on. So we talk about this topic all the time. Here's how I want to frame it today. Dan, what's the single best thing going for the Democrats right now? Not in terms of Trump's weaknesses, but in terms of something affirmative the party's doing. What's the best thing going for the Democrats right now?
The energy and that we're fighting each other. This has to happen. That is the best thing right now happening within the party.
Yeah. Sean, what do you see as the best thing happening for the Democrats right now?
Pass. I don't know. I mean, like logistically, there's not a lot going on that's great there. I think when you don't have a bona fide leader, and the thing that's interesting, we brought this up the other day, you've got some folks like AOC that are out there doing well on the fundraising, but when you look at the rank and file members, their low dollars are not coming in the way that they need to. And that's a problem. Yeah. So I'm trying to be fair. I mean, I think to your point, Mark, probably the best thing going for him is some of the Trump messaging and some of the chaos that they can point to, the economic issues that are being, but they don't have anything pro. They just have a hit against potentially Trump. And you've seen even like the focus on Elon, it's everybody else. It's not, and that's politically sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
So, but right now they've got nothing to be happy about.
I see two things that are green shoots. They're not fully formed, but the two things I see, one is there are efforts to appeal to working class voters. Like they get the fact that there's a growing consensus that all this other stuff is not going to matter if they cannot become a working class party again in ascendancy. So that's one. And the other is, again, green shoot. The major donors are being they've calmed down. They're over their anger at Biden and Harris, not completely, but enough to start to re-engage. And so people who are peddling plans to engage working class voters are finding a more receptive audience from some of the major donors to say, yeah, we might write you a big check if you've got an idea of how we can organize around this. And those are two fundamental things, I think, and they're happening somewhat organically, not necessarily under the leadership of Schumer or Jeffries or anybody else. All right. Lastly, little tutorial here, folks, of how Washington works. Pete Hegseth, two stories in the last news cycle in which he and his team have responded. First allegation was that he put Signal on he had Signal installed in a computer in his Pentagon office. The sources say, and again, he's got a problem because people are continuing to put out sources about him. The sources in the story, don't put up the second part yet. Segnis had Signal installed on an office computer. Okay. And what it says is, it's very hard to get cell service in the Pentagon. He wanted the ability to use Signal both on his phone and on his computer in his office in order to use Signal. Now, this is a lesson in non-denial denials. Here is how the Pentagon spokesperson responded to the allegation that an office computer had Signal on it. Here's what he said. He said, Secretary Hegseth has never used and does not currently use Signal on his government computer, right? Because as the story says, he's got two computers in his office. So the spokesman's denying it's on the government computer. No one's alleging it was on the government computer. This is what I call a non-denial denial. And I'm always amazed that reporters just put that in there. Like if I was writing that story, I would put it in a paragraph, say, but the sources don't say it's a government computer, so this is a meaningless response. That's the first Hegseth non-denial denial. Here's the second one. Second allegation from CBS News is that he ordered there be a makeup room put next to where he does his hits in the Pentagon, presumably so he could get makeup before he does a hit. So here's what Hegseth himself spent part of his day not reviewing battle plans, but responding to a CBS report about a makeup room. He says, totally fake story. No orders and no makeup, but whatever. Then he makes a joke about a tampon machine. Again, doesn't say that there's some room installed, doesn't deny that there's some room being created to facilitate his TV appearances. You know, no orders, no makeup. It's a non-denial denial. So, Sean, how do non-denial denials happen? Like, how do press people come up with these ridiculous responses and think they'll work, besides the fact that the press, for whatever reason, often accepts them?
Well, because I think sometimes you're trying to explain. I mean, they've got to figure out how to explain the issue at hand, but sometimes the reporter doesn't. I mean, to me, both of these stories are stupid. I really think the idea that he has a personal computer that has Signal on it, who cares?
Well, because there's also reporting that he's using Signal to improperly share information. That's
that's the point. That's different. But sure, okay, then that's a different thing. But to say that he has a personal computer that has an app on it, but
that's not what his spokesman said. His spokesman didn't say,
I get it.
Got a personal computer and Signal's on it. Instead, he says a non-denial denial. He says there's no Signal on his government computer. If there's nothing wrong with having
because they're just trying to they're trying to deflect, right? That's the idea. Right, they're basically trying to say, okay, but because what you're doing is if somebody makes an attack and you know the attack is false, but they're just off the target, if you will, then you just deny that the hit is wrong from the jump. So right now the allegation was he used it on his computer, and their thing is, well, great, he has a personal computer. Who cares what's on it? The second issue, which is frankly really stupid, is that I'm sure, like a lot of briefing rooms, there's a hold room off to the side. A green room would be the parlance that you would use in TV world, right? And so they apparently have retrofit a room and are trying to gin it up. It's like some kind of makeup room. There's no makeup artist. There's no allegation of anything. To me, again, another stupid story. And this is what happens Where I will say the other day is when you have an issue where you've gone to war with the press corps, they will pick apart any little nuance to take pot shots.
I agree with you almost everything you're saying, but I want to focus on this non-denial denial thing. Like, how do these people come up with the chutzpah to say there's no signal on the government computer when that's not the question?
Because you have two choices when you are confronted with facts. You can either lie and say they don't exist, but they know, because this is not the war with the media. This is a war with their own team. Their own team knows what happened, right? I'm sure they've been in his office a lot. They've seen his computer. They're on these group chats. And they know that he gets makeup before he goes on. So you either lie or...
No, there's a difference. A lie is something that's demonstrably false. If someone says that you're setting up a makeup room and it's not then it's not true.
Okay,
so it may be nuanced, but there's
but what's the room? Like, if the government's functioning in the public interest, I agree it's not the hugest story in the world. But if they're going to engage with the reporter, they should say, yeah, there is a room and here's what it is.
Right.
But
so if you're not going to lie, then what you do is it's Clintonian, right? It is you answer the question that you want to answer, not the question that's being asked.
Correct.
Everyone here has been a part of being instructed to kind of, look,
I think
such that the average person can't pick it up. And then you go back, Mark, there's the story of the Clintons. They'd have the press conference. You think they talked a lot. They said something. You think you have it. You went back and you read it and you're like, shoot, they didn't directly answer.
Just to be clear, I'm blaming the media as much as I'm blaming the government officials. I don't understand why these reporters accept answers like that. I'd go back.
Wait
to
a second. You go to somebody and you say you're setting up a makeup room and it's not for that. You have a right to make a denial.
But do the other one. Do the other one. They say there's a personal computer in his office that has signal on it. What do you say to that? And they say there's no signal on his government computer. It's just non-responsive.
You're trying to make sure that everyone knows the difference after the accusations that came through. First of all, again, I think the bottom line is if IT approved it, then who cares, right? That's what they should be saying. Hey,
I agree, but that's what I want them to say. He has permission to have a personal computer in his office, and he's permission to use Signal for government business that's non-sensitive in his office. Great. Give that answer. Don't say this bullshit non-denial denial. There's no signal on his government computer.
And they have not cleared the use of Signal for classified information.
Correct.
Right, but that's a whole separate.
Correct. All right.
And that's not like somebody I know with Gmail on their computer.
Believe it or not, I could talk about this all day, but we're moving on. I'm going to take a question from the platform while Sean starts to line up folks to ask there. So Miles, come on in. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Unmute.
Nobody.
Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind. And thank you for being part of the two-way community. Miles.
Okay. Santa Cruz, California. That's why you kind of see the sunrise.
Thanks for waking up early, Miles.
Three things. I'll go as quick as I can. First of all, you started with Ukraine. Remember the Oval Office dust-up? Okay, I watched that, and there was a bit on that you guys didn't comment on that made my jaws drop, and that was when Zelensky said to Trump that, well, you're going to learn. Okay, then he went off the rails. And he went on to this thing about, suddenly he's talking about the Hunter Biden laptop and how, Putin and I have gone through all this.
Miles, if you got 3 points to make, you're going to need to make them quicker than this.
Okay. You didn't say anything on that.
We did at the time. We didn't today because it's old news. We're a forward-looking show.
Okay. So the comment that I heard was Christine Rosen said her daughter asked her, does Trump really like Putin?
Yeah.
And there seems to be kind of a relationship there. That's
a long-running mystery. Miles, I'm going to give you, Miles, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we got lots of people want to ask questions today. So I'll give you time. You can ask one short question if you'd like on that topic or another.
I just said on the tariff deal, I voted for Trump 3 times, but he jumped the shark on the.
Why?
Well, because that's what he wanted to do.
Because you're skeptical his plan will work.
Oh, it won't work.
But Miles, he said as a candidate, tariffs was his favorite word, and he was going to use tariffs to change the world economic order. So isn't he doing what he voted for? How is what he's doing different from what you thought you were voting for on tariffs?
I wasn't voting on tariffs.
Okay.
I was voting on getting rid of the Biden-Obama
All right.
thing.
Miles, thank you. I got to move on. I apologize. But we got a lot of people there with Sean.
Tariff things.
Yeah.
There's a China connection that could cause trouble. Okay.
All right. Miles, thank you. Thank you for being part of Two Way, for getting up early. I'm sorry to cut you off, but Sean has a question right there in person. Sean.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what do you got?
Okay, I'm Noelle Stasko, right here in Fort Myers, formerly from New York City.
All right.
My question is the frustration level that we all have. I mean, in Trump's first term, everything was impeachment. Now we finally get him back, and we have these judges every week thwarting him, everything that he's trying to do. And they have it right out. They actually said that they have meetings to discuss this and to go after him. How do we get anything done?
Great question. Sean.
Well, I think part of this, you're going to see a lot of action on the House side. Speaker Johnson's taking up some legislation. They've got a week dedicated to this after they return from their recess, where they're going to talk about reining in judges, focusing on the limiting the district judges to the jurisdiction that they're in, that they're going to do some stuff. I also think a lot of this is going to go to the Supreme Court, which is where Trump will likely prevail on most of the stuff, even with maybe not all with a 6-3 majority, but I think maybe in many cases 5-4. But I think that they recognize that this is part of the strategy. The second thing I'll say is, in many cases, this is about the political fight more than the outcome. Trump showing that he's willing to go do this, and then having a foil in the judges who said, hey, look, I tried. This goes back to Abrego Garcia. If the court orders to come back, I'm not sure there's Democrats really that'll work for them, right? The idea that this wasn't part of this is what happens when the dog catches the car.
Dan.
So I just to clarify, are you saying that judges are meeting to strategize to block Trump? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we had a Democratic congresswoman say that they meet weekly to figure out how to thwart Trump and his efforts.
Sure. So two things. On the judicial side, Democrats, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, all railed about judges and stopping what they wanted to do. This is as old as the Republic itself, that presidents feel constrained and wish the judicial system would not rule often the way they do. The second absolutely, Democrats meet to plot to try to stop where they disagree with Donald Trump, just as Republicans did openly when Joe Biden was in office, when Barack Obama was in office. Mitch McConnell famously said in January of 2009, my singular number one goal is to make Barack Obama a one-term president and stop him from being reelected. Said it out loud. So, I mean, it's just, this is politics. So, Trump is
this is politics to the nth degree, though.
Well, look, this is the American system. There are co-equal branches. Congress is a co-equal branch, and the judicial. You can say it's not a great system. I think it is, but that is the reality of why the framers designed this, so that one person, because they all came from Europe, kings could not dominate. There'd be a check on them. Just the way it is. And this is the thing. Trump did not win a landslide. Trump barely won, barely kept the House, Republicans did, and they got the Senate. But it was close, as Doug Sosnick talked about the other night.
Yeah. Ma'am, thanks for joining. How is Sean being received there?
Oh, he's amazing. We love him all the time.
Have you done selfies, autographs? What's happened?
No. He won't allow it. It makes us pay. Sean
believes there is a price for pretty much everything.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sean, while you rotate in, let's go to Mr. Richard Davenport. Mr. Davenport, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know, after you unmute, what's on your mind and where you are, and thank you for being part of Two Way.
Good morning. Appreciate the opportunity to join. Tennessee, 3-time Trump voter. My main issue, I guess, is immigration. Seems like the simple solution to remove 20 million illegals is to punish people that hire the illegals.
Mhm. Yeah, that's been an attractive option going back to the Clinton administration.
Yep.
That's it's interesting that you asked that, Richard, because it's E-Verify that you're kind of describing, which is a program that ensures employers vet all of their hires, and it's largely been a lot of the establishment business community that pushed back on that. And I think it's we'll see if there's a resurgence on that, but this has been an issue that has sort of plagued my side, the right, more than anything else, because the big business community is been part of the problem when it comes to enacting E-Verify.
Yeah, and actually, I spent a lot of time on this issue when I was lobbying for immigration reform, 12, 13 years ago. It's not big business that pushes back as much because they have the incentives to comply with all the laws. They have the money to do it. They have the liability worries if they get caught because their balance sheets are bigger. It is small business that pushed back the most aggressive. Just think agriculture, right? Hospitality, a lot of services industries, restaurants. It is mom and pops that can't pay to comply with E-Verify, who do chase the lowest, the cheapest labor,
and don't have general counsels who are basically saying you absolutely can't do this.
And so the local chamber of commerce's flooded offices against this. It's actually the only time I saw us defeat Stephen Miller. Everywhere else we got crushed by him.
Yeah. Richard, thank you. Go ahead. Say one more thing if you'd like.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was an employer I had a small business, had close to 500 employees at one time. We had to E-Verify. E-Verify in its current iteration is a joke.
Yeah.
If you want to enforce E-Verify, you got to put a penalty on it.
Yeah. Richard,
if you hire an illegal, you got to pay a penalty.
Yeah. Richard, while you're here, I'll ask you two things. What do you think of the president's tariff policy? How's that going?
I'm all for it.
Okay. And what do you think the president should do about Russia and Ukraine?
If they can't get peace, get out. Leave
All right. Thank you, sir. Grateful to you. Thanks for being part of Two Way. Sean, who do you have there with you now?
Tell us your name, where you're from, and what's on your mind.
Okay. My name is Jeannie Pomanowski, and I'm from New Jersey. And my question is, how long will the tariffs and economic sanctions take to show positive results that the media can't deny?
Jeannie, that's a question of the hour. Dan, how long is it going to take? Best case scenario.
I think the country will give Trump probably to Labor Day. And if they get the reconciliation done, maybe to the end of the year. But I think Labor Day, he's either putting points on the board, or I don't think it's the media. I think it's his own party that's going to completely come apart over this.
Sean?
Yeah, I think you've pretty much got 2 months. You've got to see some points on the board. That's actually one of the things that's in Chris Wilson's polling that, or his analysis, the data analysis that he's got out there right now. We'll have him on the show tomorrow to explain. But the bottom line is they need to start putting, this is what I've been saying for a while. They need to start putting points on the board. This country's taking down their tariff rate. This is where the success is. People are willing to endure this a little bit. Just driving around Southwest Florida the other day on the local radio, you hear car dealerships saying, get pre-tariff pricing before the costs go up. Once that sticker shock starts coming into play, I think that's where people are going to say, love the policy, but now I'm paying $3,000 more for, an ice maker, a refrigerator, a car, whatever it is. So he's got a while just because of the way that the supply chains are working. But at a certain point, that's where you're going to lose a little of the middle. I think the base will stay with him because they love what he's doing. They love the idea that he's fighting. But Trump's very responsive. We talked about this countless times. I think when it comes to him seeing that, he'll make a deal. But watch for some of these countries. Norway is very, very aligned with him. I wouldn't be surprised to see some very good, happy talk coming out of this bilateral meeting today. It's not just the president, by the way, of, the former EU
NATO
president Jens Stoltenberg is the finance minister of Norway. I think he's going to use that relationship with Trump. They should have a positive meeting today, something result oriented. But if he can show with Japan, India, even some of these things that something's happening, to Dan's point before, as long as there's points on the board, I know some people are going to say, you didn't get 10 points, you only got 3, but 3's better than none. And I think going through this, starting to right the wrongs that have been happening over the decades, is something that they're going to need to show, and I think they will show it.
I think one
Jeannie,
interesting.
yeah, go
Sorry,
go ahead, Dan.
I was
No,
going to
go
say
ahead.
one thing that's that I'm really curious about is you're seeing talk of frameworks being agreed to, but frameworks are not deals. And what I wonder is if they attempt to say, kind of like Live Golf and the PGA, we have a framework, and now we're going to kind of go quietly fill in the details. And of course, 2.5 years later, they still haven't been able to agree. Do they try to sell frameworks that are very high level and they never agree to details and they fall apart?
Well, again, Dan, what it'll matter is, because you're right. I mean, it's like communiques after a G7 or an APEC or an ASEAN, right? They all are great happy talk. The answer will be if he can put a pause and say, hey, we've agreed in principle the following. I'm taking the tariffs down. So you get the political win and the economic benefit, if you will, of taking the tariffs down. Again, this is going to come back to in a year, in 2 years, can he say, here's the deals we've gotten? Right. So I don't think that the actual it's in 2 months to say the tariff rate went from 50 to 22. But if he can say, here are the deals that are in progress, here's where we're righting these wrongs, and we've got 20, 30, 40 countries that are doing it, that's a huge political win for him.
But Sean, what if he says we have frameworks? I'm dropping the tariffs back to 0. We're going to get this. And it just doesn't.
But look, and I think that's basically how he's handled Canada and Mexico. And Canada and Mexico have both stepped up their immigration and their fentanyl deterrence factors. So it's not so much the tactic. I mean, again, if he takes it down and then in a year from now can show that he actually got results, I think people are less concerned about the timing and more into the result.
Jeannie, what else are you doing today down there?
Going to the pool, enjoying the sunshine, the warm weather. It's beautiful. Yeah. You should come down.
All right. Sean didn't invite us. He just went on his own. Thank you for joining. We appreciate it.
Cheap today.
Please
spread
so much. Please spread the word about two-way. Sean, you got somebody else you want to bring in real quick?
Let's see. You guys, come on, somebody. All right, come on up. Let's go. Rolling the dice, Mark.
Right,
no, they're on their way. We're like 30 rows deep.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I see like in the distance.
Look, see how deep. Look at that. Here it's like the Price is Right. Come on up. Or come on down.
Come on down.
All right. I know, guys. My bad.
All right. Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell us your name, where you're from, and what's on your mind for the American people.
My name's Stephanie Giambalvo. I'm from Long Island, New York. And my concern as a mother is education, obviously, number one, but most importantly, affordability, specifically us comparing the cost of like New York as an example versus Florida. We're noticing the interest rates are one of the big drivers of, our increased costs in insurance. And, what are we going to do as a party to make sure my children's generation of the Republican Party is also set up for success as well?
Can you afford your kids' education? I mean, if you look at college right now, are you guys able to save enough that your kids could attend the college they want to? Or where do you think you guys are in that? Because when you look at the average cost of college right now, I think it's got to be a challenge for a lot of parents to say, we're going to be in a position where our kids will have the choice to go wherever they want versus we might have to send them to only certain places.
Correct. I mean, my children won't have just a blank check, right? I mean, we're putting our money aside as, like our middle class family, working family. My husband's a retired fireman. I was working in corporate America, and we're just doing what we can, but we're not going to allow them to go to a school that they can't afford. That's going to put them into debt.
How old are your kids?
6 and 4.
All right. So you got a little bit of time.
We got a lot of time, but never too early to plan, right, for our future. And,
Totally.
Just trying to afford to live on a regular basis is, challenging, right?
If you could tell the Trump administration that they had to give them 2 things that they could do to help you guys afford education or make it more inviting for your kids as they go through the system, what would those 2 things be?
So one of the reasons why we would be moving to Florida is school choice, having the ability to send our children where we feel best fits their educational needs. So offering programs in that regard, and then also having my children be able to think freely and not feel, that they're going to be challenged in any sort of way in their school environment and all that, and just promoting that openness and having the 2 sides, kind of be open with one another. That would be great. I mean, my daughter has friends from all different sides of the aisle, and we just preach, we're all people, we're all friends, and we're all just trying to do our best.
Do you vote in Republican primaries in New York?
We do. Yep.
Do you
We're in
have a-
Suffolk County, which
Yeah.
generally tends to lean
Yeah.
Republican.
Do you have
most
a
of the time.
do you have a preference for governor for New York between Elise Stefanik and
Mhm.
Mike Lawler? Do you know those two folks?
Yes, Elise Stefanik, I mean, I'm all about, the girl power, and I think she did an excellent job. I think she's, young, working, young and working, and, I appreciate that. It's very challenging. So, that's where I am. So.
Okay. And what's the thing President Trump's done so far that you like the most, and what's the thing you like the least of what he's done so far on any area?
Security, I would say, is definitely number one. Regarding like the Department of Education, kind of some of those new orders that came out, I mean, kind of in flux right now. I mean, to me, it doesn't really affect me. I'll be moving to Florida soon anyway, so they can attend where they want. Maybe one thing, obviously, President Trump is our guy. I mean, last 3 cycles, my husband is a very, very strong Trump supporter, FDNY all the way. And, sometimes, maybe the other side feels like, maybe his verbiage, right, is just a little harsh. But for me, I'm good like that. It's no problem for me. So
New Yorkers probably don't have the same
People.
view of some of the language.
I agree. I'm in
People.
South Florida, and
Yeah.
so
Most
maybe
people,
not the same.
most people I know who live on Long Island, their main criticism of Donald Trump is he's too meek. He's not aggressive enough in how he expresses himself. At least that's been my experience.
Personally, I mean, most of us in Suffolk County, we're all very hardworking Americans, and we're just trying to make it work. Our families just trying to be close to one another, and that's really what matters to us the most. I think he's done a good job, executing those family values, and we're happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. Are you buying a home in Florida?
We are. We actually are owners in the Landings here. We have a condo, and then
Okay.
we'll be coming full time with our children very soon. Going to look at a school tomorrow, actually.
Okay. Well, good luck with the move. And
Thank you.
congratulations on not having to pay income tax anymore. That's good.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Sean, grateful to you for asking the question. Sean, go ahead. While you bring somebody else in, let's bring Sebastian in. Sebastian, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please, after you unmute.
Hey everyone, Sebastian from Nevada, voted for Trump in the last election, former Democrat. I wanted to highlight something that I don't think has been getting much attention in the media or sometimes on two-way, which is the Trump administration's work with Black Americans, and he delivered big for HBCUs yesterday. So I want to highlight that. It's not getting a lot of attention, but I see progress. I track this pretty closely. And I think that you'll be surprised at how the trend line will continue to grow, particularly with Black men under the age of 40 who are interested in what he's doing, see things that speak to their economic, educational, security concerns, and don't really respond to the pure negativity that comes from other quarters of the anti-Trump, Trump derangement syndrome community. So I just wanted to share that with you all, get your impressions if you had even paid attention to that, and welcome you to continue paying attention, because I think it resonates in powerful ways, and it's surprising what I've already seen on Instagram, less on X, about how the HBCU order was well received.
Yep.
Sebastian, are you a graduate of an HBCU?
Oh, he's muted.
He's muted.
Sorry. Go ahead and unmute.
Yeah,
You said you are. Okay.
I am. I went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia.
One of the best.
And can I just, when it's interesting, we talk a lot about issues that don't necessarily get the attention. When you were yesterday, when this was happening, how did you hear about it? Is it that you follow the administration closely, or there's media outlets that conveyed that to you?
There's an Instagram account called HBCU Collective, and they a representative of them did a breakdown of the order, and they looked at the fact sheet and talked about the first Trump administration's HBCU funding efforts. They're about a collective $550 million, $300 million of which was permanent funding. And so I went and looked at the actual order, and then looked at the fact sheet as well, and shared it with some of the alumni circles that I'm a part of. And people were very impressed, because right now there's kind of a conflation of African-American issues related to civil rights and DEI. And people like me are saying those aren't the same thing. They're decoupled. And President Trump is proving that.
Yep. Sebastian, thank you. I want to get one more question. And so Dan or Sean, real brief response to Sebastian, and then let's bring Sean's guest there in.
I saw the news in the Wall Street Journal. I did not see the details. I think that's awesome and good for Donald Trump for supporting them.
Yep.
I think it's great. I actually, the reason I asked the questions I did, Sebastian, is I think you're onto something, which is they're doing a lot of things. And the question is, are they getting, that word out through the appropriate channels, through Black radio and some of the other things, urban radio? We've talked about it. They're in the briefing room. So I actually think it's great what they're doing. And I'm glad that you're bringing it up. I hope that they are communicating that, like in so many other ways, like business news goes to business, and are they doing that in a way that's going to resonate and get out there? So I hope they do, and I appreciate you bringing up the issue.
Sebastian, thank you. Sean, gentleman with you.
Who are you? Where are you from? What's on your mind?
My name is David Marion. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. And my question is, how are things going to settle with the Feds and Mr. Powell and President Trump and the interest rates going through the end of the year?
Great question. Sean, what does your crystal ball say on that?
Well, I think if you look in the last 48 hours, what you've seen is President Trump be very clear that he appreciates Jerome Powell's steady hand at the tiller, if you will. He walked back a lot of the initial concerns. I think Powell, as we've talked about the last couple of days, is very well liked by the financial community. And so for those reasons, I think he stays. It'll be interesting to see the next meeting of the Fed, whether or not there's an interest rate. I think that's going to be where we are economically, and how they react is going to be, I think, the next iteration in this sort of saga, if you will.
All right, Dan, quickly, because we're up against water aerobics.
Sure. I think the key is going to be inflation in the next few months. If inflation remains kind of at this 2.5%, 3%, which is not quite the 2% they want, I think pressure is going to increase on Powell. But if it starts to move up, Trump will pray to God he keeps interest rates there, let alone starts to raise them, because inflation is getting out of control again.
Sir, I ask you with that prejudice, have you ever seen this program before?
Not really.
Not
but
really.
You will
right.
going forward.
You'll be a regular viewer, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
That was part of the commitment, the contract that everybody signed.
No comment. Well, give us a try. We'd love to have you a part of the two-way community. And Lexington is one of our 5 favorite cities in Kentucky.
Very good. Thanks.
Before you go, real quick, a lot of Democrats and some Republicans talk about your governor as a potential president. What's your reaction to that?
I'm not really a big fan of our governor. We're mostly on the down ticket with the rest of the ticket. We're big fans of the rest of the ticket, but he's done some good things. But during COVID, when he shut down the churches and those type things, we weren't a big fan of that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Enjoy your day in Florida. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, what do you have? Oops, I muted Sean. Sorry, Sean. Unmute, please. My instincts, my normal instincts. Yeah. Sean, what do you have on your program tonight?
We got it's Thursday, so we've got a great panel. Steve Cortez is going to be on. He's got some great insights. Jen Pellegrino from America First Policy. And then Dan, the book there on his left, Batya Ungar-Sargon. We have her debut on the show today, and a great take. She's what they call a MAGA lefty. And then, as I said, tomorrow, Chris Wilson will join us with these insights. Really unique. So 2 great days ahead of us before my big C-SPAN debut, doing red carpet arrivals at the WHCA.
You won't want to miss Chris Wilson. His take on Trump and his rhetoric about tariffs is really smart. So don't miss that. I once did the red carpet with Walt Frazier, and it was incredible at the Correspondents' Dinner. Tonight, two ways, 6 o'clock Eastern time. I will be here on Two Way tonight with all the news of the day. And amongst those joining us, and there may be more, but amongst those joining us is Vani Hari, who's known as the Food Babe. Dan and Sean are both big fans. And we'll be talking about Maha. So if you're interested in Maha, Republican or Democrat or independent, whoever you are, she knows a lot about the importance of healthy food. So please join us at 6 o'clock tonight. And then right after that at 7 o'clock, Michael Moynihan off the DL, back with a special guest, John Ronson, the author of the new book, The Men Who Stare at Goats. So you've been publicly shamed. Join Michael at 7 Eastern for that. And then the 3 of us will be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock Eastern with all the coverage of today's water aerobics events and the latest on tariffs and Putin and Ukraine and everything else. So thank you for watching. Thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Have a good night. Thanks for the folks there with Sean. Good applause. Thank you for that. Have a great day. See you soon.
Yeah.